Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we are with a really cool one. Little strange, little fun, but overall something I love. This is Sultai Glarb casting off the top of the deck with a Keruga companion. I wish I could fit that into one sentence. Keruga top. We're gonna call it Keruga top. This is one of our donation decks for the week. It comes to us from Lexa, who says, "This is a weird one. This is a Glarb deck with Keruga as my companion, and the intent is to have nearly every card be 4 mana or higher, so you can play the entire deck with Glarb. But having a bunch of stuff that can pull double duty with adventures or cost reduction so that it's not all super expensive. Would love another set of eyes on this. This deck is casting such a wide net on things, it's looking for a lot of stuff that probably fell through the cracks, and would love another set of eyes because of that." There's a lot of eyes. You've said eyes a lot of times. Absolutely, Lexa, I can definitely work on this. This is really well done, honestly. I know there's so much more that can be done and so many very specific things to kind of go in and change, but overall I'm very impressed by the deck. I already really like it, and there's a lot of strange and fun things we could go into directions, and there's probably some discussion on power level interaction, but as it is, I love it. So without further ado, let's look at the commander and see what we're working with. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. So who is Glarb, Calamity's Augur, and why are they our Keruga top commander? Glarb is a 2/4 for 3 mana in black, green, blue, Sultai. They're a legendary frog wizard noble, and they've got a pretty nice picture. I do really like this kind of relaxed stance from what I'm almost universally sure is the main villain of the story. The story, actually, when I read it, this is very much so like Kamigawa with Lord Honda, the emperor who stole the child of one of the gods. This is very close to the same kind of initial inciting activity for a story, so I thought that was kind of neat. I almost said newt. Going back to this commander, they have 3 main abilities. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands and cast spells from with mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library. Obviously the spells, not the lands, have mana value 4 or greater. Or you can tap down Glarb to Surveil 2. And that last part is kind of interesting. I do like it. It does fuel things like Delve, which we will see, but otherwise mainly to filter our top deck. It's kind of strange too, considering our commander is very well suited for Death Touch by having a 2/4 stat line. That means he can block really well, but if we want to proactively surveil, that kind of gets in the way. I'm not too sure about this, what's the best way to deal with that. I think you probably just accept the fact that you're not going to be blocking with them often. And then we have a companion, our commander's commander, Keruga the Macro Sage, which is 5 mana in Simic colors. The companion clause is your starting deck only contains cards with mana value 3 or greater and land cards. This is like the bad cousin to Lurrus. They couldn't give Keruga your permanent cards are 3 mana and greater, kind of like Lurrus. They just said all cards. Otherwise, I think Keruga would be just very good. Which is funny because if you did that, Keruga wouldn't even be that great because you wouldn't have that many permanents that were 3 mana or not. Regardless, I think they were particularly mean, but this is a very good restriction to work with the deck. As seen before, we benefit from 4 mana and higher, and Keruga wants 3 mana and higher, so we've got a combo. Looking at the deck list itself, as I mentioned before, I'm really impressed. There are so many ways to cheat on these costs, and I love almost all of them. The best ones, obviously, I think are land MDFCs that are lands on the other side, so they can be used on both sides by Glarb. But then we also have a bunch of cards that have an adventure cost, or that can be cycled. Where is there? Like Sky Turtle, or the land cycling ones. We've got the prototype card, we've got delve cards, we've got cards that are just straight up reduced in mana cost under certain clauses. Very, very cool, very, very strong, and a lot of different directions to go in. So overall, I really like the collection we have here. And I'm going to say, maybe there's a caveat here, that with what we have, I think we can build a pretty good 6 to the mythical 7 power level deck. The things we're going to be lacking is efficient and universal removal. There's a few cards we could be putting in that I haven't put on my list, but that might be worth considering, such as Beast Within, or do we have that saga? I believe we don't. I'll actually put that in now. Our black-green saga could be one for sure, which is this one, Binding of the Old Gods. Once again, just for a little bit of ramp and something that can destroy all permanents. Obviously, Beast Within can't be cast by Glarb, but we might have to find little locations where we can still get some interaction. It might even be that all of our interaction needs to be board clear themed. I'm thinking of things like the enemy to, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a big green creature that destroys our artifacts and enchantments on ETB. That is very, very good too. Generally, like these kind of effects that you're going to be giving up on the efficiency, you're going to have to make up by numbers or like value. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think generally this is a really, really great way to build the deck. We have 39 with MDFCs, but otherwise 35 lands, which is nice. I genuinely think we could go higher because of Glarb's ability to play lands off the top. We aren't going to be in as bad of a situation with the idea that, like, should we just have too many lands, we play them off the top and we can play more cards that allow us to play cards off the top. Once again, depending on budget, I wouldn't mind you playing like Fabled Passage and Prismatic Vista. I remember that Lexa does not like to play off-color fetches, and though I'll suggest to those who are, you know, willing to, that you should definitely play off-color fetches here, but anything that can fetch or help fetch probably is very much so worthwhile here. Even Foreboding Landscape helps, just because it's just nice to have yet another thing to shuffle your deck that, you know, is free due to it not being 3 mana or more. That being said, there's a few cards I'd like to take a look at and I'd like to be a little critical on. The one that stands out to me the most is Hex. Hex is just dramatically one of the worst cards ever. For those, and I'm sure Alexa knows this, but this ruling here is exactly the main reason. You can't destroy up to 6 target creatures. You have to pick 6 target creatures. And there's going to be turns that this is just going to rot in your hand, or rot on top of your deck, or even worse, rot on top of your deck and then rot in your hand. It's just overkill when I would prefer to play any form of other 5 mana black board clear, especially things that are kind of maybe more, I'm thinking things like Consume the Meek, or I know Shadow's Verdict, I think. There's a few ones that are more around CMC. Both of these hit 3 CMC and less, so it does destroy our commander, but in a pinch, they're very, very strong, and otherwise, it could be also just very good to wipe the board and keep all of your bigger stuff. So big fan of that. Something else that I do think could be really interesting here, I'm going straight to additions, but would be a rebuild. So I wish I had little like effects and fanfare. Doo-doo! Here is an alternative idea of how to build the deck. This deck could be run as a flash deck really, really easily. From Leyland to Anticipation to the, is it the Tidal Barracuda, to a number like Vidalcan Orrery, a number of flash granters are 3 mana and up, and I would say the majority of them are 4 mana. Once you have one of those in play, not only can you cast spells off the top of your deck, you can just play cards at instant speed. Now, lands will still be the stopgap, keeping you from going for a very long time, but just because all of those effects naturally fit into the mana cost you're looking for, I think it's a direction that could be interesting. Something else, but without the fanfare, because it's less preferred. Time Warp and Take Another Turn effects all tend to be for 5 mana or higher, with the occasional at 3. That could be really, really interesting here. It'll make you a lot of enemies, but if you've ever played decks that try to take multiple turns, you know being able to dig through the top of your deck and see more cards almost guarantees you to do it like in a chain over and over again. And that's not including cards that can place cards from your graveyard on top of your deck. Can be very, very interesting here. However, that is a very, very polarizing way to play. A lot of people do not like that. I, for one, don't mind. If you're going to beat me, I don't want to sit around and tell you what's the fair way to beat me. So if you want to go infinite turns, I respect that. But it would probably very much so increase the power level of the deck. Going back to cuts, because I kind of danced around a little bit, something that is worth considering is I am a little less keen on some of the cycling or the channeling, mainly because, as those who know, these are effects that only happen from your hand. Now, this isn't the worst thing. You just wait a turn for them to go off the top into your hand, or you surveil them into the graveyard, or you mill them some other way, and you're not too bothered. But it is a stopgap. Colossus Sky Turtle, or even, where's our big boar? The Tusker here are very, very good cards to cycle with very strong effects, but are very difficult to cast. I mean, this also applies to things obviously like the Ent or the Troll that have a very, very cheap forest cycling, but a very high mana cost. Those I'm gonna be less hard on the Troll and the Ent or anything else that is to cycle 1 or 2, but cards that require 3 mana to cycle, I think are a lot of work, such as the Tusker, and making them really, really difficult to keep on your deck. It's cute that we can use this as a cycler early on, but it's just not really as good as our commander. Like, okay, think about it like this. Imagine instead this was Cultivate, right? If this was Cultivate, I would say 90% of the time they're identical. You cannot use the 3 mana ability because either cycling needs to be in your hand or your commander needs you to have it on top of your deck. Needs it to be 4 mana or higher. So both this cycling and Cultivate don't work. However, once you draw this card or draw Cultivate, both of them unlock the 3 mana option, and Cultivate is better than cycling this card by far, right? So though it's not on theme because you want everything to be 4 mana or higher, I think these cards could straight up be replaced with Cultivate effects. I'll leave that up to you. It's not what you're looking for, but it is something worth considering. And when we get to additions, there will be one more 3 mana card I will suggest, but I think that one will be interesting as well. So Firemine Vessel is another one that kind of catches my eye. Is there a reason this isn't just a 4 mana put 2 lands into play card? And the answer is yes. The answer is this will draw you a card with Keruga, which I think is fine. Will the clause of these tapping for 2 different colors ever matter? No, because I think almost universally there is no color and 2 mana cycling effect, so you're going to be generally in the clear for all that. So the only downside is that this can be removed and it comes in tapped. Now, traditionally 4 mana cards will come in tapped, not all of them. Some of them will put 2, at least one of them puts 2 forests directly into play, which is better. But this one specifically, I think, is the fact that they come in tapped evens out. So the only problem is this gets removed. And to me, it's just why take the risk, right? Why not just play the card that puts 2 lands into play and goes to the graveyard, which allows us to fuel the delve cards we have much better. Thran Dynamo, on the other hand, obviously is better because it taps for an additional mana, but if you were worrying about mana color, I think it would be something worth considering, because a Thran Dynamo versus, let's say, Gilded Lotus, there's a big difference. And Thran Dynamo versus putting, let's say, once again, one of the cards that says 2 forests, and let's say tapped, being able to grab Zagoth Triome, and then let's say like Bayou, for example, will just be really, really good and much better than Thran Dynamo. It is a mana color thing, so I will leave it up to you. Are there any other cards that are a little... Oh, I guess Out of Air is a good example of a card that is really hard to cast with cast reduction. And I suppose things like Assassin's Ink, like this collection here, might be where that is. Otherwise, looking at these kind of cards, things like Johann's Stopgap, Demon Inferior, are, in my mind, just really close to being just a little cute. I insinuated this earlier that I think I would just prefer like Beast Within, even though it's not 100% on theme, or the 4-mana Saga, or a number of other 4-mana just destroy target creatures. I think I would like that better, even though it's going to be harder to cast off the deck sometimes, because they'll be consistent, and they will be better than generally, like, these cards can be returned, right? Johann's Stopgap, I think, is one of the better ones, to be fair, because it bounces and draws, but Demon Inferior, I don't see this really being in here. And like something like Bite Down on Crime, it's like so much work to make this happen, and I think in the same as a Delve deck, like being in the same space in a Delve deck is just going to be detrimental to you. Once again, I recognize this is just trying to reduce the mana cost of these cards, but honestly, just play a 4-mana removal spell, right? I'm sure there's several more black-green 4-mana and above spells that will just destroy any permanent that I think you will be generally happy with. Okay, so that's generally what I have to say. Some of these I didn't go into all details, but like you can extrapolate. Greater Tanuki has the same problem as Krosan Tusker. Yeah, generally that's the one that caught my eye. Hey, what about the Maggot? That's a cool one. Okay, they weren't maggots, but they just kind of look at it. The Huskburster Swarm could probably go in here. It's not very interesting, but the fact that you can cast this off the top of your deck for 1 mana particularly easily is kind of interesting to me, and a 6/6 Menace Death Touch is fantastic. Okay, let's go into the other additions that I have. So the first two are 1 letter apart. Let's start with Mulldrifter. I think it is a crime to not play Mulldrifter ever. The thing that's really good of Mulldrifter's effect, and something you can look at for other cards, is that Evoke is cast this spell for its Evoke cost. It doesn't say cast from hand. So Evoke can be used anywhere from any like zone as long as you have the ability to cast it. So this is a 5-mana card that can be cast for 3 from the top of your deck, and your commander will see that and allow you to do it because it continues to be a 5 CMC spell. So Evoke seems to be the best version of alternative casting cost that you have access to, and this and Mulldrifter are the best examples. Notably, both of these are just good because they're divination, and I wouldn't mind you having a little more card draw, and this is very, very accessible card draw. So both of these are pretty good. Obviously, Mulldrifter has a very, very, like, they're kind of, Mulldrifter is the extreme version of Mulldrifter. Sometimes you cast Mulldrifter for 5 mana because you got nothing else to do, and that's fine. But Mulldrifter, you got to cast for 7, and you end up with a very, very good creature for that exchange. Now, Annihilator 1 is pretty meaningless. Annihilator is very polarizing. Either it's very, very good, or people are just going to sacrifice like artifacts or mana rocks or treasure tokens, which are all artifacts, or lands. Still, 4/4 flyer is really, really good, and if you were interested, there are probably other ways you could cheat this into play. So, big fan of that. Moving forward is the Undaunted cards. These caught my eye because these cards continue to be 6 mana, but you just cast them for less. Curtain's Call is 6 mana, but if you have 3 opponents, a 3 mana destroy 2 target creatures. Hex, this is not for sure, and I think it's rather, rather cool. That art is so upsetting to me. I feel so bad for those people. And what a like awful, awful killing weapon. But this guy right here, they're having a great time. So Curtain's Call is the main Undaunted card. Then I saw Coastal Breach, which I think is also interesting. Once again, this is 7 mana, so it comes down to 4 mana. Bounce all non-land permanents. What I find to be kind of interesting about this is the fact that This will bounce Keruga back into your hand, so you get to replay a bunch of cards and draw the cards again. However, that is demanding you to have quite a bit of mana, so sometimes you should just consider this to be a board clear, especially against token decks. Alternatively, if you were thinking about that flash version of the deck, this would be very, very good in it. Just very powerful to do this effect at instant speed, as anyone who's cast Cyclonic Rift knows. However, there is one more Undaunted card that really, really caught my eye, and that's Durnan of the Yawning Portal. Now, Durnan is a bit of a weird card. It has a lot of text, but the main idea is that every time you attack, you reorder the top 4 cards of your library, pick one of them, and the rest go on the bottom. So I guess you don't reorder it, you just pick one, and then you exile that one. Now, it has to be a creature. That is the one clause for that, but the card is permanently exiled. You may cast it for the rest of the game because this is not requiring Durnan to be on the battlefield, and the spell has Undaunted, which means it costs 3 less. I like this for a number of reasons. Not only is this just very good because you're more creature heavy than anything else, it's also a 4 mana creature. That means it fits the whole plan, but it also allows us to pseudo shuffle the top of our deck. We can get rid of the top card, and yes, the top 4 technically, but usually we get stopgapped at 1 card, not, the 4 in a row. With that, even if you whiff, you at least get to see a new card, which will be rather good. I don't know. This is a question that I have, maybe a rules person can tell. Do you get to look at the card below those 4 while this ability resolves? My understanding is no, because that's actually not how things work, because you have to resolve the entirety of the spell during it. But on the other hand, it says anytime. Look at the top of your deck anytime. You don't need priority to do so. I don't know the rules, but something I think about. Then I want to put a few more cards. I was wrong. This is the second 3 mana card. Boger Trowler is a very, very powerful bolt land because it's half Bojuka Bog, and I think very notably you are able to play it as a land. Are you able to play it as a land? I really hope that's true. I know it's not going to be in Glarb's rules. I'm banking that you can, considering that you have the others. So that'll make up for the fact that it's 3 mana, and I think generally it's just a very, very good card, so generally you're happy to play it, even though it is not 4 mana. Wandering Archaic is another card that caught my eye. This is a card that just goes down in value over like years. It's just been kind of going down because at first this was supposed to be stupid good, but then people started playing with it, and it's definitely not stupid good, but it is good for sure. So with that in mind, I think this card, like the backside where we ramped the entire table, I think is better than the front side, but the front side can be cast off the top because it's 5 mana. So with that in mind, this is one that interests me, that I think a deck like this can go very far with, but I'm not entirely sure the pure value of it. Finally, actually, Invasion of Zendikar is one of those 4 mana cards that you can put into play and get 2 cards. This is 2 basics, which is not the most ideal one, but it leaves the invasion in play, which is something I really like. Therefore, this is going to be a card that your Keruga will see and draw a card off of that I think is better than the fire, the mana rock that I said to take out. Battles are really hard to interact with. There's only a few things that will destroy them, and traditionally they're very, very low on the battlefield. Very low on the priority chain. Man, my brain's coming back, I promise. Another thing to think about is the fact that you lose mana rocks on incidental removal, like board clears that destroy artifacts, whereas invasion sieges, you shouldn't lose it that way. And on the other side, it is a very, very cool creature that I do like. It just becomes a mana dork, which is just nice. It continues to be 4 mana, so it will still draw you cards off of Keruga. The last card, and the one that's the most interesting to me, is Elvish Spirit Guide. Now, it's interesting to me because it doesn't work the way you think it does in a deck like this. What do I mean by that? I mean, the perk of Elvish Spirit Guide is it lets you cast your commander a turn early. When you have a 3-mana commander, being able to cast them on turn 2 is really, really cool. You need to be able to fetch into the right colors and have the mana, end this card, but getting Glarb on turn 2 is very strong. But here, it has the problem that you still have only 3 mana going into the next turn, and if there's not a land on top of your deck, there's actually nothing you can cast off the top at that mana cost. Okay, sorry, not nothing, but most of your deck you won't be able to do anything meaningful with at 3 mana. So, though it's still a big benefit, you are doing a crapshoot. The other benefit you get is you'll get an extra turn of surveilling, which I think is not nothing, and the fact that Elvish Spirit Guide can just be used in other means, like to ramp to a different spell at a different time. Hit 4 mana when you need it, hit 6 mana when you need it. So I really do like this, but it is a polarizing card, especially when you have lower power decks. It is a card that really feels like it doesn't earn its spot. It feels very explosive, but often, it just doesn't do much, right? And those are my additions. Glarb really caught my eye. This is a really, really cool deck, and I'm so glad you sent it my way. I'm kind of at a pause of what else to suggest and what else to do. I would definitely look more into the Evoke cards and think about that as a direction, but otherwise, I think I would just take this and start testing. I'm wondering how you're going to fare against more controlling decks. I think decks that kind of all give you space, you'll do very, very well against. But if your opponents are going to just hate your commander out, that might be a little difficult. We still have options to deal with that. Notably, there's that myth. It's not Myth Unbound. There's that 3 mana enchantment in green that says that your commander tax is halved, and therefore you go up you go up slower each time. But even then, there might be a certain point that Glarb is just hated out of the game. You could find reanimation spells that cost, less or more. I'm pretty sure there is a 5 mana black reanimation return. It was No One Left Behind. I think this one would be the one I'd play because it can get your commander back for 2 mana while being a 5 mana card. I should confirm that you're not playing it. I'm pretty sure you're not. But that one caught my eye as well. So maybe some reanimation to get your commander back. But until we see what other decks do against you, I think there's only so much we can do. So those are my suggestions. I'm really excited to hear more about this. This is really, really cool. And I think it would be very, very fun to play. I've definitely been hungry for a Sultai deck, and Glarb is pretty attractive right now. If only it wasn't for, Dina and Zimone. They're the other ones that are constantly in my brain, so we'll have to see between them what I pick. Thank you so much, Lexa, for supporting the channel. Good luck and happy deck building. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you and good luck in brewing and building.